The Barrel House is brought to you by you, the listener, and those of you who have chosen to support the show over at patreon.com/barrelhouse, especially our Whiskey Legend tier patrons, Greg, Katie, Lauren, and Joe. Without you, the show wouldn't be possible. Hello, and welcome to the Barrel House. Hello and welcome back to the Barrel House. I am your host, Joe Kane, and today, back to reviews. But first, it's been a minute. Life's been crazy, but we're getting back in the swing of things, and we've got a review here today for you. This is new Riff Distilling's new 6-year malted rye. This is a banger. I can't wait to talk about it. But first, a little bit of housekeeping as always. Patrons will be hearing this a day early. Everybody else will be hearing this the same day, I believe, maybe one day before the year in review episode goes up. It's not going to be like an award show. It's going to be like my favorite whiskeys after this year, kind of in different categories and price points. Some of them will be new. Some of them will be just new to me. Some of them will be the same ones that have been the winner in that category for me for a while, just haven't been supplanted by anything else. So that'll be a little bit longer episode, but it shouldn't be that long. And the original plan actually was to have that be a live stream. And I guess it is theoretically possible as I record this right now that could still happen. But a lot of stuff's going to have to come together between now and then for that to be the case. So we'll see. If not live, definitely it'll be out the week between Christmas and New Year's. So that'll be the year in review. And I said the magic word, I said patrons. As always, this show is 100% listener supported. Without the fine folks over at patreon.com throwing me a little, just pennies, just a little bit here and there. There's no minimum, just give me what you got. This show wouldn't be possible. I especially have to thank our Whiskey Legend tier patrons, as always, like at the top of the show, Greg, Katie, Lauren, and Joe, for carrying way more than their fair share of the load, keeping this thing rolling down the road, keeping the wheels on it, somehow keeping the wheels on it. Certainly isn't all me. So if you would like to help support the show, help keep it going, help with all the little things that either go wrong or need to be replaced or need to be ready to roll, and whiskey for the reviews and all that, you can do that at patreon.com/barrelhouse, or you can go to barrelhousepodcast.com. There's links there for every way possible to help the show, even if it's just sharing it to a friend and getting more listeners. Speaking of more listeners, also the TikTok, it is such a silly thing. I'm doing TikToks. They're very fun. They seem to be very popular. Excuse me. I basically just do pour a big glass 10-second review of a whiskey, and I did one that was how to make an old fashioned. They're very quick. They're like 30 to 50 seconds total, intro, outro, and review. They're not specific, but they're very fun. So check that out. That is Barrel House Podcast on TikTok, and there's links to that on the site too, I think. If there's not, there should be. There will be. But yeah, so that's all the housekeeping. Let's get into this review. We're going to make these reviews a little on the quicker side and the longer form episodes a little on the longer side. That way there's not so much droning in the episode where you just want to know if you should buy a bottle. And this is definitely a buy this bottle if you see it. So like I said, this is new this year from New Riff. This is a 6-year-old malted rye, 100% malted rye. It's 100 proof, sour mash. New Riff is doing some really great stuff. I'm not the hugest fan of everything they do, but I do not dislike anything they do. It's got a really, really good nose. This is a super Christmas time, holiday season kind of whiskey too, right? It is. I mean, you get some like oatmeal raisin cookies, but the kind that, like, in my head, I imagine the kind with like the swiggle line of frosting, like 3 or 4 swiggle lines of frosting across the top. It's pepperminty, maybe even like a candy cane. I don't think it's quite as sweet as that, but it's definitely got that direction of peppermint. It's relatively sweet. It's like the sweetness does not seem like a honeyed sweet or a brown sugar sweet. It seems like some straight up like candy sweet, like white sugar candy sweet. It's a little bit of citrus. It's not orange though, and it's not super bright. It's almost like bitter citrus on the nose, maybe like lemon zest instead of lemon juice. It's just really good. I could honestly just stand here and sniff this for 20 minutes, but you would get bored. The palate is really interesting for a rye. This is my first whiskey of the day, and that 50 proof definitely comes in a little hot. I will say, after a couple, you know, if I'm sitting down here doing notes and I've had a couple, that 50 proof does not feel quite that hot, but it definitely came in a little bit hot here. It's fruity. I'm getting like some pretty typical like apricot cherry stuff. It's a little bit of dark chocolate. It's got that herbal note to it, although I think this leans more in like the mint direction than like the dill direction, which we get a lot in ryes. Got some of that oatmeal raisin cookie still. Maybe a little more bite. Like there's another herbal bit to it there. Another like I don't know, maybe gingery, something like that. But it's minty. It's very good. It's really, really good. It's not the best rye I've ever had, but I think it's a great new entry into the rye market, especially at this price point, which I believe is about $50. The finish is, I would say, the weakest part of this one, right? So the finish comes through. We get all those notes we got in the nose and the palate, which were kind of a very, call for what it is, even though there is some like darker fruits and some darker sweetness to it. It's a very bright, kind of crisp profile. Although the mouthfeel comes through really thin, and that really shows up here in the finish. The finish goes by like in a second. It's a very quick finish. And I think the only thing new in the finish is maybe like a fresh roasted coffee kind of bit to it. But I would say most of the pleasant flavors from the palate drop off. So that mint kind of gets piney or grassy. And it just kind of rolls off there. There's not a ton of barrel influence. I mean, I would have expected, I know 6 years isn't super old, but there's not nearly as much wood or barrel char on this. I wonder what the wood is actually charred to on like a number, like how heavily charred the wood is, because this does not come through as a super charred or heavy barrel influence whiskey. For an American whiskey, especially at Kentucky, right? Southern whiskey, 6 years, it's really not picking up a whole lot of that barrel, and that's a little surprising to me. I would have liked to see more barrel, and it's, I think, a little more barrel probably would have added a lot of character to this one, which it desperately needs. For sure it needs. So, you know, overall, I would say this is definitely a really good whiskey. I mean, I really enjoy it. The finish, like I said, is the weakest part. The bulk of the The experience though is really good, and then its price point, it's a solid grab. All in all, I would definitely say buy it. This is definitely a if you see it, buy it. And if rye is not your thing, or if you're like a little back and forth on ryes, this might be one to try. It's a little outside the box on ryes, being malted, but 100% malted rye, but it is not super out of the rye wheelhouse. So if you don't like rye at all, maybe not for you. That's really all on this one. Over at the Film Appraisers, we've just got the Christmas special out and the reactions for Spider-Man No Way Home, which was phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, go see it now. I believe we're getting ready to record and put up a Matrix reactions and possibly even more Spider-Man talk, because we didn't want to stop. We were having way too much fun with that one when we ran out of time. So go check that out. That's filmappraisers.com. You can go to the barrelhousepodcast.com and get all the links to everything there. Go to eargluemedia.com/Discord, join the Discord. When you get there, tell them you came to see a man about a glass of whiskey, and we'll talk about it. There's a channel there for us. That's really all I have. If you hear this before the new year, I hope you had a good new year. And hopefully you check out the year in review episode when that drops too. I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. And I will see you all later. Take care. The Barrel House is written, produced, and hosted by Joe Kane, and it's a proud member of the Earglue Media Network. Views and opinions expressed on this show belong only to the mouth they came out of. And as always, please remember to drink responsibly. Slanjava.